Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations about money. Join your host, Lauren Williams, four-time Olympian turned financial planner, as her guests share their money stories. We aim to help you own your personal money story and feel good talking about it. Money is a tool that can help you live the life you want. You should feel comfortable listening, sharing, and communicating about it. Now, here's your host, Lauren Williams.
Today, I'm excited to have Brian Street here to share his money memoir with us. Brian is an entrepreneur, speaker, life coach, and Ph.D. student at the height of his career after overcoming many obstacles. Brian and I discuss what his dad said to him as a child and how it shaped his decisions going forward. We also talk about the importance of not letting people put their limitations on you and how he found his true passion. Brian's journey has been full of financial ups and downs, but he's maintained a positive attitude and maintained hope through it all. Let's listen as Brian shares his money memoir. All right, today we're talking to Brian Street, Brian A. Street to be exact. Brian, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to see where this goes and just to be able to share with the world.
All right, well, let's just start by you telling a little bit of who you are, where you come from. Let's go all the way back to childhood. Can we start with just a little bit of your upbringing, where you're from, and your first memories of money?
Definitely. Born and raised in South Mississippi. I'm the second oldest of four children. Had very loving parents, both of them very hardworking. But they were those, it's blue collar workers. So they always went out and was on their grind, just making things happen. I just look back at childhood and I really can't see or say of anything that I really wish was better. As a child, we pretty much, as far as it comes to money, we pretty much had everything that we needed, everything that we wanted, the way I remember it. Huge Christmases every year. I'm talking about the living room just full of gifts. We got new shoes at least twice a year. Dad always had money just laying around. You can go to his nightstand in the bedroom if you need something for school the next day, grab a few bucks, grab some change, and, it was no problem. Mom always had money because she worked, but she didn't work consistent at the time when I was growing up. So my dad, he always, he took care of her in that regard also. So I really didn't see where there was lack of money. But then, as I grew older, I started to see friends that had different things and that had their lifestyle a little bit different than mine. So I knew that there was more out there. But at the same time, I didn't see the lack in my life pretty much until after I was out of grade school. We had money to go on trips, to do projects in school and all those things that a child should have, all those experiences that they should have. But like I said, as I grew older and I got into my, I guess you would say older adolescent years, I really started to see that, okay, there were some of my friends that had it so much better. And that's what really started to get me scratching my head when it came to moving into adulthood.
You refer to your parents' jobs as blue collar jobs, but you talk about having a lot. I think traditionally people think of blue collar jobs as jobs that force you to kind of scrape by paycheck to paycheck. So what sort of work were they involved in? And tell us a little bit more about that.
My mom actually, when it comes to her work, she dropped out of high school in the 10th grade so that she could help her family. She has, I want to say 6 different siblings. So she really dropped out of high school so she can really be able to help her family to raise her brothers and sisters and bring extra money into the house. Once she was an adult and she began to have kids with my dad, she got into the clothing factories. They were producing various different garments. So she would be standing up for hours and hours and hours at a time and making decent money. But my dad, he has been a supervisor at this place called Ingalls Shipbuilding. And what they do is they build naval ships. So my dad, he's been an insulator in those ships for more than 34 plus years now. And he got into a supervisory position pretty quickly. So he was just one of those individuals that would work 10, 12-hour days and just bring home really good money. But at the same time, this is what really impacted my life. His words specifically, Brian, you've got a brain. You're smarter than I am. I want you to be able to go to work and use your brain and not your body. And one thing that we always noticed about him, he was always in pain. He was always hurting. And he always pushed me to say, I have to go and bend down in all these little cracks and crannies, these little corners, doing this insulation and, it's really wearing on my body. I come home smelly and sweaty and tired every single day. I want you to be able to go to work in a suit and tie and be able to use your brain and work smarter and not really have to go out and work so hard the way I do. And that really stuck with me. And just looking back, like he put in work, he put in hours and hours and hours, and he wasn't able to dedicate as much time with us as kids because he was working so much. But he really tried to balance that out, I guess, with the amount of money that he was bringing in. He never was affluent by any means, but we were definitely in that upper middle socioeconomic class.
That's great to hear how he worked so hard to be able to provide for his family. And, you talk about how you didn't feel lack despite them working in, what are described usually as blue collar jobs. Can you talk a little bit more about, like you said, he taught you work smart, not hard. What other things did your parents teach you about money growing up? Was there an allowance with you and your brothers and sisters? How did that all work out? What kind of money behaviors do you think that you inherited from childhood?
I really never thought about it when I was coming up. We never had an allowance as far as doing work, but we had an allowance as far as achieving excellence. So one thing that dates back the furthest was grades. If you brought home A's and B's on your report card, you got $10 for say. If you brought home all A's, you got $20. That's what he did when it came to school. But then when it came to athletics, since the age of 4, I was playing baseball and I was a pretty good baseball player. So I got $5 for every home run I hit. And I just remember my best season when I hit 15 home runs, and that added me up to $75. And I just thought I was rich because here I am doing something that I love and I was being paid to do it. In a sense, I look at the things that I do now in life and it really marks back to that time when I was doing this sport that I just love to do. And the fact that I was good at it and I put my all into it, I was compensated for that. And, as a child, some people may frown upon that, but I think that that's some way that you can instill into your child. Okay, you can win in life doing something that you love.
I think it's so important to drive home that message that you can win in life doing something that you love. So frequently people go after the job that makes the most money and they're miserable, but you can be passionately pursuing something you love and making a good living or making enough to make yourself happy, which is really the biggest thing. You talked about comparing yourself. You said you felt like you had enough. And like you said, you were middle class, upper class as the way you remember it. But at the same time, some light bulb came on and you realized you didn't have as much as others. Can you talk about like that time in life and what happened where you started to compare yourself?
I grew up in a predominantly white school system. So there was only a few of us, African Americans. So when it came to, I guess you would say, materialistic things, when it came to those type things in high school, when you really start to think about those things, having the nicest shoes, being the first one to get a new car, things of that sort, I saw that lots of my African American friends weren't having those things. Like I didn't have those things. Whereas so many of my friends, as soon as they hit 15 or 16, they were driving to school in a car. And there wasn't just any old car. It was a nice car. And just seeing that and seeing the clothes that they started to wear on a consistent basis, it was like, wow, like they got all this nice stuff, these brand new clothes. And I look back and I always had brand new clothes, but the places that my brand new clothes came from weren't these high end places. They weren't these well made material. So I really just started to see that. And it made me wonder, like, why do those people got so much? What is it that they're doing that we're not doing, to really allow them to have that lifestyle? And that's when I just really started to scratch my head. And I really never took into consideration, what do I need to do to get there? At that age, I didn't. But my parents just always continued to push me. So I was a good student, actually graduated with a 3.89 GPA. So I had good grades. I was on the right path to go out and be successful in life. But there was always there, okay, I think I'm like one of the best at what I do, but I'm still not having what they have over there. I think my dad is awesome and he's a great worker and makes good money, but we still don't have what they have over there. And as I grew older, I had my roller coasters in life where my mind shifted here and there. But as I got into my upper 20s is when I really started to think, okay, this is what I need to do to get to where I want to be and be able to put myself on that level with them, but not do it in a comparison way, but do it in a way that said, this is what I deserve in life. This is what's owed to me. And just really started to put myself around different people that helped me go down that path.
Okay, so you said you were a really good student in high school. So did you go on from high school to college, or what was the path like after high school?
Woo! That's where the story, I guess you would say, really starts to become meaningful. Through high school, I was a four-sport athlete: baseball, basketball, football, and I ran track. So I was always active with athletics and still kept my grades up and everything. But one thing that I noticed after the football game on a Friday night or after the basketball game, my parents always highly encouraged me, go get something to eat and come back home. Go get something to eat, come back home. And at the time, I didn't really think about why they were telling me to do that. But then as years passed and I would see certain people that would go and hang out in certain areas after those games, they would get in trouble, throw them off their path, and just really never led to anything positive. So when I got to college, I went straight to the University of Southern Mississippi after I graduated high school. And I had all these scholarships and, I was just sitting high. I had that freedom to really run wild within me. So I didn't have mom and dad telling me to come home at a certain time. I didn't have mom and dad telling me to go and study until I get a certain amount of or a certain hour studying in before I go out and play. So every single day after class, I'd go shoot basketball for like 2-3 hours. After I shot basketball, I'd go and work out in the gym or about an hour or two. And then I would wait to push back my studying and anything school related until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. After playing ball all day and working out, you're tired. So I'd fall asleep and I didn't get the studying done. I really wasn't on that successful path as an academic student. And my grade point average just dropped and dropped, dropped and dropped. Academic probation. Starting my second semester at the university, I was on academic probation. And every consecutive semester, academic probation, because I wasn't getting the grades pulled up. By the spring semester of my sophomore year, academic suspension. It gave me the boot. I had come from being a 3.89 GPA student in high school to dropping down to a 1.76 GPA in college. That was so embarrassing. But at the same time, when I was academic suspended, I had got a girl pregnant at that same time. So me having my ego about my intelligence, my knowledge, my grades, I didn't tell anybody that I was on academic suspension. I just said that I withdrew because I had to go out and take care of my obligations as a father.
So what age are you when you had your first child?
I was 21. I turned 21 the month after he was born.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's pause there because there are some financial implications to being a college student and having a child. So let's talk a little bit about what that part of life looked like. How did you, now that you're withdrawing from school, make ends meet, or what did you do to be able to provide for your son and yourself?
Just to rewind it a little bit, I was working at McDonald's for most of my first couple of years, bringing home $242 every 2 weeks. And I just thought I was rich. I didn't have any bills to pay aside from my cell phone bill and putting some gas in my car. So I was buying myself nice things here and there. But once I did have my child, I realized that things had to shift. And initially, I continued to work at McDonald's and I picked up a second job. So I started bringing in a little bit more. But I realized, as a father at this point in my life, this isn't going to cut it, being able to provide for a family. So my wife and I, we really thought, well, she's my wife now. I guess I kind of spilled the beans. The girl that I got pregnant, we set out a plan. Okay, she's going to go to school full time and I work full time. And that's when I got into industrial oil industry. And oh my goodness, I started making big money. Whereas I would work 12, 14-hour days and bring home close to $2,000 a week. And I had never seen that type of money in my life. Nobody in my family has seen that type of money. My dad made really good money, but his wasn't quite that much. So I had these relatives and quote unquote friends that would say things like, oh, Brian's got a taste of that money now, another dropout. He ain't going back to school. But luckily I had a plan with my wife. And as soon as she graduated, I went back to school. Things shifted a little bit. But during that specific window is when I got my first taste of making really big money, but I was unfulfilled. Making good money, but unfulfilled because I didn't like what I was doing. And just remember what my dad told me when I was a child. You don't have to go to work doing this hard labor and coming home all sweaty and stinky. That's exactly where I ended up. Exactly. So I had to really analyze my life. This is the path that I wasn't supposed to choose. This isn't where I was supposed to be going. but I ended up there out of fulfilling what I felt as obligations. But then once I fulfilled those specific obligations through that window that I set with the woman that was in my life that had my baby, that's when I jumped back into school. And then our financial situation took another dip on SNAP, so food stamps. And, we really were dependent on that for quite a while. It was embarrassing. You don't want to be in a grocery store and people see you swiping this yellow card and, that's one of those poor people. So it was embarrassing, and I really wanted to be able to work my way out of it. But at the same time, I saw that I had money over here that I can put elsewhere doing certain other things. So we really kind of took advantage and tried to stay on those benefits as long as we could. But then once we were able to get back off of them, just that feeling of independence and liberation was just phenomenal.
Sounds like you took this leap of faith to go after what you said was really the thing that you wanted to pursue, that thing that your father told you, that you wanted to have that education so that you could work in something that was not physical labor, but more so related to your mental abilities. So was there some pressure when you had to say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, even though this is creating stable income for my family, and then deciding I'm going to go back to school, it's going to be expensive, we're going to live on pretty tough times at that point? What kind of feelings did you have? Was it like anxiety, or was it like, okay, I feel confident about this because I know this is the right path and this is going to be worth it in the long run?
Initially there were some jitters. My wife and I, we knew it was going to be tough. But one thing that we did have, we had so much support when it came to our family, when it came to her parents and my parents. They understood our situation, but also they understood our aspirations for our future. So I knew that, okay, we're going to have a little bit of a fallback if we do run into tough times, or when we do run into tough times. So it was just a plan. And, we didn't plan our pregnancy. We didn't plan that the right way. So after that happened, we really put our mind to work as far as we need to make sure we plan out what's going to happen here moving forward if we want to make this thing work, this marriage, or we weren't married at the time, but if we want to make this relationship work and make sure this child has a stable life. And we knew that as soon as my wife graduated, I was going to go back to school. And we just mentally brought ourselves together to be able to deal with that. And it was a struggle. It was a financial struggle, but we made it work. I was able to graduate, and I look back at some of those people that were saying, oh, he's just another dropout. Well, not only did I go back to school, but I went back and I got 2 degrees, one in psychology and one in Spanish. Really, I looked at that being that ticket to really give me that life, doing something that I was really wanting to do. And definitely there was that anxiety there. There were plenty of days where our bank account would go into the negative and we didn't know how we were going to make it. And we felt embarrassed to keep going back to our parents for money because we were in our mid to upper 20s at that time. But just having those supportive parents, we were able to make it through.
Yeah, it's so amazing, the importance of one, having a plan. And the plan doesn't always have to be make $1 million gazillion dollars. It's really to have a plan to stick to something for this period of time and putting a good support system in place so that you can execute on that plan. I think a lot of times we forget about the importance of the plan and then the importance of the people who are going to cheer you on, encourage you, and sometimes, maybe financially support you when you're creating a plan. But I think that people are more inclined to help you with your plan when you come, more inclined to help you, period, when you come to them with a plan versus, can I borrow $10? Can I borrow $100? Can I borrow $50 for whatever reason?
Exactly.
If you come and you say, I have this plan and these are the things I'm trying to do, then, when things aren't going quite as planned, people are more inclined to invest themselves in you because they want to see you reach your full potential. So I think that's great. Take me to what happens after you earn these 2 degrees. You're struggling financially. Now you've got these degrees. What's the plan from here? Where are you going?
Well, I got my 2 degrees and we had been brainstorming on, okay, what is going to be the next step? My wife is actually from South America. So we were like, okay, so we could possibly move to South America. I've got connections down there that can help get you a job. I'm in the counseling field as a psychologist. The degree that I have here, that will be translated over there into an even higher degree based off the socioeconomic status of the majority of people down there. That was an option. She had family in Orlando. Maybe we could move to Orlando. Then we had a friend of the family that lived in Miami. She had her own business. My wife's sister had previously moved to Miami. So we decided we're just going to make the jump to Miami. If we come on tough times, my wife's sister is there. We have this friend of the family that has her own business. So I can start working with her as a transitional job until I find something in my career field. So we got down there, and actually I got down there literally 2 days after I graduated. I moved to Miami. And I left my wife and son back in Mississippi because I wanted to be able to find a good school district, find a good apartment, and all those good things to make sure that once they do get there, life was going to be good. While I was there, I was working for this friend of the family, had her own business. I was a warehouse manager for her. So I pretty much just anything that came in the warehouse, I would handle shipping, managing the warehouse, sending things out, receiving all those good things. And she paid me good money. But right after I moved my family down there, this was about 2 months into me moving down there, her husband, this friend of the family, he quit his full-time job and started working on her business. So pretty much the vast majority of the things that I was doing, he started doing. So, here we were, I was bringing in good money. I was really sacrificing on the things that I was purchasing while I was there. So I really put myself to the bare minimum where not many people know. But I was actually for a period of time living in the warehouse that I was working out of because I knew if I was going to bring my family down and be able to position them to be successful, position ourselves to be successful, I got to have as much money as possible put away and put to the side. So I really sacrificed my humanity and lived in a warehouse. And this was January, February, so it was cold. But there were certain things that just started to pop off, even some things between myself and her sister as far as money came. That I was like, okay, I can't have myself in this environment. I got to get over here where I can really do what I need to do to position my family for success. So I brought my family down. And that was when this girl's husband started working on the job. And it was like, seriously, we just got down here. Things are starting to go well. And here we are getting thrown a curveball. So I had to find another job. And, the anxiety started to kick in. I started to stress. But, I had some pretty good coping mechanisms, but still it was so tough because I had a wife. And as soon as she moved down there, we got pregnant again. So here I was with a baby about to be born within the next year or so with a 5-year-old son, a wife. She wasn't working. She couldn't find work. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I had to get these little odd jobs here and there. And it dropped us back down into that poverty, whereas we had to get back on SNAP. And we had our bank account continuously going into the negative. But I had developed those coping mechanisms and I had put myself around a different group of people that prior year. So that's when I really just started to tap into, okay, what do I need to do to really get my life on track? I was in the network marketing profession at that time. If you know anything about network marketing, there's people on one side that's all about stomping on anyone to make a buck. And there's people on the other side that really want to help people with the services and products that are provided. And I was like, okay, I need to make money, but I'm not trying to be this corporate Wall Street type guy that's just walking on the next guy.
So network marketing, are you saying something like MLM, something like more pyramidish where, you bring somebody under you and then they also join in and start doing it? Is that network marketing?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I got into that industry. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just wanted to be able to make some money and provide for my family. But what I really got from that industry was putting myself around people that were really firm believers of personal development, of reading, of listening to audiobooks, of really enriching your mind. So I just took a turn and I started really to self-educate myself and really start studying things that made people successful. And I can remember I finally got another job, but it was working as an admissions counselor at this for-profit institute. And it was kind of misleading, the job title and everything. So I got there and I was pretty much trying to force people to come and pay to go to this school, saying that they're going to get this trade. And it was people that had been called over and over again. So it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I was let go from that job. And this was after, okay, we're about to get back on our feet. I've got a decent job. I was let go because I wasn't bringing in the numbers. And I just hit another low. But I just used those coping mechanisms to really keep myself up. Whereas once I was let go from that job, I was walking home because I lived pretty close to the job. And I literally, as soon as I got home, I dropped down, face down in the bed. I was in tears. My wife came to my side and I told her what happened. And we just started brainstorming. And over those next couple of weeks, I want to say like a month and a half or so, I was jobless. This is in Miami, Florida, jobless, living in a very high-end neighborhood, just living the lifestyle. I had to search deep. I had this guy that invited me out to these church functions, and he always would say, Brian, how are you keeping it together? Like, if I was in your situation, I don't know what I would do. But I had really developed that mindset that it's going to work out. I just got to keep pushing forward. So eventually I did. I find a job in my job field. And if you know anything about social services, because I became a foster parent support specialist, there's not a whole bunch of money in that profession, especially at the entry level. So I still wasn't able to really make ends meet living where we lived in Miami. So I took on a second job where I was a valet parker on the weekends in a very high end neighborhood. So that's when I really started to taste money and see how my hard work was actually bringing me money in when I did that valet working. And at the same time, working as a foster parent support specialist, I saw these teenage guys who are aging out of the system that didn't have those life skills to go out and be successful in the world. And I wanted to be able to do something about that. So this leads into that next chapter where we moved back to Mississippi and I started on a master's degree. So here we are throwing ourselves in the fire again. We're about to go down and dead again because here I am going back to school and my wife, she had a job, but that job wasn't making us a lot of money.
Let's pause for a second and talk about cost of living a little bit, because I think that's one of the things people take for granted. You live somewhere and you say, I want to live somewhere else. And you don't realize that living somewhere else, doing the exact same job somewhere else may pay less, may pay more, may pay the same, but the cost to actually live that someplace else could be a lot more or a lot less. So coming from Mississippi, where the cost of living is relatively low, moving to Miami, where the cost of living was really high, can you talk about some of the differences you saw in the ability to be able to live despite what your income was?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that we took into account. As I mentioned, my wife's sister moved down to Miami before we did. So we kind of got a gauge from her and from the individual that I was going to be working with of how much the cost of living was going to be. And that transitional period where I went down without my wife and son, I was really getting a good feel for how it was going to be. But moving down there and making that decision, we knew that the cost of living was going to be higher. But this was going to be the very first time out of our entire relationship. Theoretically, she and I was going to be working at the same time. Plus, I had 2 degrees and she had a degree. So we were like, okay, things are going to be good because we're actually both going to be working. We both have degrees. So we should be able to make it work. And the thing is, even with making more money or being able to make things work with our degrees, we went down thinking that, okay, we know the cost of living is more, but I'm pretty sure that, the wages are more also. We really didn't do our research in that regard. Whereas, yes, you have to pay more to live there. It is a higher cost of living, but there's only specific professions or specific career fields that really thrive in that area. And the ones that we were in was not one of those. So that's where we ran into some hardships in that regard. We thought we were prepared, but we really weren't. And just to give you a number, from living in Miami, by the time that we left from Miami, we were paying $1,500 a month for where we were living. And we moved back to Mississippi after leaving Miami. We're paying just under $700 a month for an apartment that same size with even more room. So you would think that we'll be back living the high life or so when we got back to Mississippi. But me going back to school as a student, it really just threw that wrench in.
I think that was really important to share with people. Like you said, 700 could get you something a lot larger in one state versus paying double for something smaller in big cities like Los Angeles, Miami, New York, et cetera, where the cost of living is a lot higher. Okay, so you're back in Mississippi now and you're getting ready to go to school for your Ph.D.?
Actually, this was for my master's degree.
Okay.
I got back and I had a different mindset going back. But like I said, I put myself in that circle of these network marketing people, but I really didn't allow myself to be labeled as a network marketing person. I just started to really self-educate and really just started to build knowledge within myself, build up my self-confidence and things of that sort. And in those last couple of years in Miami, I really polished myself as a well-respected professional when it came to giving presentations, when it came to talking about people that I was talking to people about things that I was passionate about. So on the very first day of orientation, when I got into my master's program, we had to introduce ourselves. And when I introduced myself, told who I was and where I was from, and I said I didn't come to this program to be a student and sit in the classroom, get good grades, and hope for a good job afterwards. I came to get engaged in the community, start building relationships so that once I do graduate, I have the opportunities waiting for me to go out there and make the change that I want to make. And I did that right off the start. My very first semester, after delivering a couple of presentations in class, I was pulled into this group of competitors that were developing a social business that was going to be competing at the college level. I really didn't see my fit at the time because it was in a part of the nutrition department and I was part of the social work department. But I finally realized, okay, I can utilize my speaking abilities, my passion to speak on things to be a part of this group, this team. And that was exactly why I was brought on. But my advisor, he wanted me to discover that myself. So we competed at the college level. I delivered the 90-second elevator pitch. We killed it. We beat up 3 other teams at the college level. We went to the state level a couple months later, competed against 10 other institutes of higher learning. We killed them, took first place. We got about total right under $1,000 per individual in reward money, about $7,000 to actually implement the business. And that's where I was like, wow, so I can actually be paid to speak about stuff that I'm passionate about. So that's when I really started to get serious in life. When we came back, I was back at the university. I just started getting pulled into all these various different organizations where I had these leadership positions and just started to make positive influences on those who were around me. Got into my internship and I was offered to go and speak at a juvenile detention center. And that's when it just really took off. Every week I was there pouring into these guys and really helping some of them restructure their life and start taking different paths in life. And I just kept continuing to take that more and more serious. And this is one thing that I want everyone to listen to. There's going to be people out there that want to place their limitations on you. So I had all these people, classmates, and even professors. Brian, you're spreading yourself too thin. You're doing too much. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm thinking, you don't know my pace. You don't know what I've got in me. Don't put your limitations on me. Just because you can't see yourself doing it, don't say that I can't do it. So that's the person that I became. And there's a gentleman by the name of Napoleon Hill. He uses something called the QQMA formula, where it's the quality of work that you do, the quantity at which you do it, and a mental attitude which you do it with. I was token Mr. Positivity during my master's program because no matter what was going on, I always had a smile on my face, always super positive. So everything that I had going on, I was still thriving. I was doing good things. I was winning money. I was being given these anonymous donations because of the things that I was doing and the passion that I had to pour into the community. So I actually made more money going to college than I had to pay out of my own pocket as far as my master's program worked because I was on an assistantship, a graduate assistantship. So I won more money during that program than I was actually paying out. And that's just me putting my all out there, knowing what my purpose was and utilizing it to the max. And that's where I really started to get into myself.
I think you bring up a really good point there about passionately pursuing opportunities and also being able to be open to other ways to find income as it pertains to receiving your education. So if you put yourself out there for these different opportunities, you never know who you're going to meet that would be willing to invest in your education, where you're going to win something that is going to help you be able to pay for that. So I think it's really cool that you, like I said, put yourself out there and had a good attitude despite, they said, not having a lot of money. I think sometimes a lot of people think that I don't have any money. My life is so bad. It's so sad. Oh, if I could just make it to when I get a few more dollars, then I'll be happier. When really happiness comes from whatever it is that you're passionately pursuing and living the life that you want.
Exactly.
And living the life you want often leads to money finding its way toward you and helping you achieve whatever it is that you're dreaming toward. One question I do have for you is, now you have 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree, and you talk about working and not having a whole lot to live with. So did you also take out student loans during this process?
I was fortunate to be that worker that really attached or really gravitated towards, or that the professors really liked. So they wanted to pull me onto projects where they were working on grants. So I received a graduate assistantship where they were paying me to go to school, plus my tuition was waived. So any money that was taken out in loans, it was very small because it was only just to fill those gaps that were going on in our life, in our personal home life. But as far as my education is concerned, I've not had to pay towards my education since I finished my bachelor's degree. So in my master's degree, I had completely paid for a tuition waive based off of the graduate assistantship. So that kind of freed me up to do little things here and there on the outside that I really wanted to do to generate some personal income. And that's when the speaking really took off and I started to speak. at various different school districts, various different leadership conventions all over the state of Mississippi and eventually into the state of Alabama. And just really being able to pour out my passion and to draw people towards me, to want me to come and speak to their organization, to speak at their conference, to speak at their luncheon. And that's when, I just really fell into my calling. And that was towards the end of my master's degree, where I started to make hundreds of dollars just going to speak. And I'm like, seriously? Here I was, this person that used to be afraid to get up in front of the class and give a presentation, but now I'm speaking in front of hundreds and hundreds of people, just pouring out my passion, and I'm getting paid for it. Coming up, I never realized something like this was possible. In that last semester of my master's program, I was recruited to LSU to work on my Ph.D. But I had already made up my mind of what I was going to be doing in my life to make sure that my family is taken care of. During the summer, after my master's program, I actually co-developed a mentorship program where there was a nutrition component and a mentorship component. I was pulled into this program based off of some of the interactions that I had during my master's. So here I am developing the curriculum to a mentorship program that was going to be implemented in a couple months. Just got my master's degree. And so many people who were in my class stressing out about finding a job. Oh, I got to go and get licensed first. And here I am just grinding, putting myself out there during that master's program. And it positioned me to be able to turn away so many jobs and actually develop a job for myself. Whereas I created this curriculum and I was able to be offered a contract to be paid more than anybody I ever knew in my family to do things that I love to do. So I started developing this curriculum and really pouring into this program. They couldn't legally hire me as this consultant, leadership consultant, specific position. They couldn't hire me until 6 months after I was outside of the university's payroll. 2 weeks ago, I finally signed my contract where, like, just looking at the numbers and all of the zeros, I was speechless because I had never seen this much money. Whereas if I were to put in 40 hours a week, I would be knocking on $200,000 a year, doing something that I love to do, just pouring into people as far as leadership. But fortunately, being an entrepreneur, which I have transitioned into, I could set how many hours I wanted to work and how much of that money I wanted to take. So I really was able to develop that balance in my life. Whereas now, being out there, being in the public's eye, I've had even more contracts to come my way, that one of them will be signed here pretty soon. And then I still just go out independently and just do my speaking, my coaching, and various things of that sort. I'm seeing those years and years and years of sowing that I did just selflessly. And I'm just knowing something's going to happen, just having that vision way out there in the future and just taking those disciplined steps. I got to trust the process. I got to trust the process. I got to trust the process, and really having communication with my wife. Something is going to give. I don't know when, I don't know what, but something's going to give. And year 2018, I signed my first very lucrative contract to do the work that I love to do.
Well, congratulations. I think that is really cool to be able to hear how you started and you've stuck to the process of planning, sacrificing, and really being able to know what it is that you wanted to do, looking for the opportunities, keeping an open mind so that you can have opportunities come your direction, and then finally see that the door is open and you walk right through it. So I think it's really great for you to be right where you want to be. And I think one of the key things you said was you have the opportunity to make $200K, but that's not the most important thing to you. It's work-life balance. And so how are you going to work in order to balance your life and the other things that you want to pursue? You want to do other things outside of this contract, and you're going to go after those as well, instead of let me work myself to death to maximize the opportunity within this one thing. Multiple streams of income is always a really good thing. Being able to diversify yourself outside of just having one option and one thing available to you is great. So to hear you talk about the idea of that not being the most important part of this contract, the contract saying, hey, I made it. This is what I was working toward. But the dollars and the cents is not the ultimate part of this contract. It's really the achievement of getting to being able to do what you really love. One other thing you touched on was you talked about communicating with your wife and, how important that's been through this whole process. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you two communicate about money and how you plan? And I think a lot of people have trouble, and they say, more than 50% of the divorces end up because of financial reasons. So talk a little bit about how you and your wife communicate about money and how you guys organize yourselves.
That was probably one of the most challenging parts of my process, because I never wanted to be that person that ended up in divorce. About 8 years ago, my mom divorced my dad. And throughout childhood, she let us know, because whereas my dad was an awesome dad, he wasn't a good husband. So we knew that they were going to be divorcing as soon as my baby sister finished high school. We didn't think about it as much, but she told us when we were young. And I just saw what that did to our family and how it just tore apart so many strong relationships that we lived through as a kid. So I didn't want to repeat that. So I had to find a way. And whenever my wife and I would have disagreements, whether it be money or whatever in life, I had to be the bigger person and just, be able to sacrifice. But then when it came to our financial future, whereas my wife, she grew up very high class. Her family had 3 maids, one which had her own part of the house, huge house, own soccer field, horse ranch, everything. But she hit poverty when she was in middle school because her dad lost out on a huge business deal where he was pretty much messed over by 2 of his partners. So she got down into that lower poverty level, and she just became, I guess you would say, content, whereas living that frugal lifestyle and just not really worrying about having more. I'm that same way. I can be very frugal, but I know that my creator put me here with a gift to really give away to the world. And he put me here to live in abundance. And that's one thing that I tell my wife. We're not meant to struggle. We're not meant to be struggling, having our account steady going into the negative. We're put here to flourish. And I'm about to use what I've got to make sure that we do flourish. And whenever I was in Miami and I was doing this network marketing thing, I was at a meeting really late one night. The next day, my wife, man, she gave me the cold shoulder. And we had this long conversation where she was like, you need to just stop doing this network marketing stuff. You ain't making no money. And I was like, just trust me. I don't know what it is, but it's going to take us somewhere. I just had to continue to put that in her. And one thing that one of my mentors once said is that your family and friends won't start supporting you until strangers start celebrating you. Your friends and family won't start supporting you until strangers start celebrating you. So once I got in this master's program, I was bringing in money like crazy as a student. And she would come to one of our banquets or something. And all these, I'm talking about big money executives and administrators are coming up to her. So you're Brian's wife. Thank you so much for allowing him to be part of what we got going on. We promise once he graduates, you guys are going to be good. You don't have to worry. You've got a really good man. And we thank you for allowing him to do what he's doing. And we know that he's got a good wife at you. It wasn't until that moment that my wife really started to celebrate me or to support me. And she continued to see me moving forward, continue to see me on these calls impacting other people's lives, continue to see individuals reaching out to me on social media, thanking me for how I impacted their life. And slowly but surely, that was really what helped me to really win her over as far as my endeavors and how the endeavors that I'm on, they aren't selfish. They're for the family and to help us live that easy life, for her not to have to worry about this bill that can't be paid, for her to be able to live happy, knowing that we can put our son in this extracurricular activity over here that's really going to help and nourish his brain. Just having open communication and just being truthful, not being money hungry, but knowing that you're chasing your passion and you're not chasing cash. Too many people out there chasing the dollars. Don't chase the dollars. You chase your passion. And you just dig in and give that passion away. And the dollars are going to chase you. Like I said, I was able to turn away money. And that's a good problem to have. And I'm so thankful that I actually have that problem now. Whereas nobody in my family could ever say that. And now I'm positioning my family more so and more so to live that life of abundance that I feel that we all deserve.
All right. So now you're married with 2 children. What are you going to teach your kids about money? Based on everything that you've experienced in life, what are the main principles that you're teaching your children?
Well, actually, that's one thing that I'm really trying to spread is we need to start teaching our kids young. I recently really got into investments and learning about investments and how long-term value investing can really set up that generational wealth, and how in certain demographics throughout the world, throughout the United States, there's generational wealth that has been developed over the years based off of just simply knowing how to invest. So I've got my son, teaching him on investment. I'm teaching him on business plans. He wrote his first business plan a couple weeks ago. He brought $10 to me one day and said, "Daddy, how can I invest this?" Just really making sure I pour into his mind, whereas we're driving down the highway, instead of listening to some of modern day music that's mostly garbage, listening to personal development material, listening to audiobooks, and putting it at a level where he can understand it, or at least just pausing every so often and explaining to him what he just heard so that it can be age appropriate. He can take it, he can digest it, he can repackage it and realize how he can utilize it to move forward in life. I knock on wood, he was tested in Miami as gifted. And ever since then, we've been putting him in as many programs as we can to really pull out that giftedness from within him. And he's really starting to show it more and more. And, just reading these business planning books and reading these entrepreneurship books, I'm just really trying to develop his mind at a very young age to think in a way that I didn't start thinking until I was in my upper 20s.
Yeah, I think it's so important to instill good money principles and good money energy in your children from a very young age, because we don't realize that what we experience, what we see growing up, the behaviors of our parents and how they act around money, even if they're not talking to us about money. And sometimes that being the biggest thing, them not talking to us about money is going to shape the way that we behave about money as adults. And undoing some of those behaviors that we learned in childhood or we saw in childhood or we didn't learn in childhood is often the thing that holds people back from richly going after financial freedom and whatever is their financial success or their idea of financial success. So being really strategic and intentional about teaching your kids is very, very important. Okay, so we're ready to wrap it on up. I have kind of a lightning round, if you will. It's 5 questions, and you just kind of got to give your short answer. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The first thing is you have $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
I'll put 20% of it in food, another 20 into a little savings over here if we really, really, really need it. And then the rest of it, I'm going to put into an investment.
All right. Food, investment, and savings. What is the most meaningful gift you've ever received? Who is it from and why?
I would say being chosen as Student of the Year in my program 2 consecutive years and Student of the Year in my cohort 2 consecutive years, being the first time that ever happened in history, being publicly rewarded that, and my wife being able to witness that.
That's amazing. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice I've ever received? Well, that's the way it's always been done. So that's the way we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, let's go with a positive note. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Do you. Point blank, period. You go out and you do you.
All right, something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Working out. I absolutely love working out, whether it's doing something that's calisthenic here in my apartment or running or at the gym. I just absolutely love working out, period.
Awesome. All right, final question. Can you share something with us, one thing that you'd like to improve about your own finances in the upcoming year?
I've set a goal and I've shared it with a few people of making 100,000, which after signing this contract, I need to change that goal. But just being able to help so many other people in my circle fulfill their goals throughout the year. And actually something like that going on right now is allowing me to do that. So being able to set a certain number of individuals to help make sure they fulfill their goals before this year is out and not fall into that New Year's resolution trap where you fall off your horse and you don't get back on it.
So what's the action item that's going to actually make sure that you reach your goal?
Reaching out, accountability to these individuals on a consistent basis and building that mentorship relationship where they feel they can be transparent with me to allow me to help them get to those goals.
Awesome. Those are great goals. All right. So last but not least, just tell people how they can support you, where they can find you, what you're up to.
Well, currently full-time Ph.D. student at LSU. So that's pretty much at the top of my priority track right now. Leadership consultant for that mentorship program. But what I'm currently doing is I'm really focusing outside of academics, really focus on building my personal enrichment coaching program. Whereas people who want to become a coach, people who need a one-on-one coach, people who want to become a speaker, I'm developing those individuals into coaches, into speakers, where I facilitate a class every Tuesday night for those individuals through this specific program. And you can reach out to me through my website, yourlegacybeginsnow.com, yourlegacybeginsnow.com. And pretty much all my social media is there. You can connect with me. You can become part of my personal enrichment coaching program and start being compensated for doing that, which you already love to do. And that's pretty much what I've got going on right now, and really being able to balance all this with spending time with my beautiful family.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Brian's money memoir. Our goal on Worth Listening is to provide you with information that empowers you to take action in organizing your finances so you can pursue your goals. I loved when Brian discussed how you don't have to have a lot to feel rich. Living below your means and keeping expenses low can make you feel rich. He also shared with us why it's important to pursue what you're passionate about and establish work-life balance. When you go after what you're passionate about, money will find you, and you'll have the opportunity to choose what is important to you. But you have to have a personal and a financial plan that you're following to keep you headed in the right direction. Our word of the day, cost of living. Brian talked about the difference in the cost of living in Miami versus southern Mississippi. Things like groceries, housing, utilities, car insurance, healthcare, they all vary depending on where you live. You may have a certain amount in one city and have more than enough to live and even save. If you decide to take a job that offers the same amount somewhere else, but it's more expensive to live there, you may find yourself stretched a little thin. It's important that you research the cost of living and the impact it'll have on your financial goals before making a move to a different place. Thank you for tuning in today. If you want help organizing your finances, make sure you check out worth-winning.com. If you have suggestions for a guest or would like to share your money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com. We hope you found this episode worth listening to.